please to join me for a short discussion. Okay, so I would like to thank you all again very much for your inspiring presentations. And I'm sure there are questions in the public, so I would like to give the opportunity to the audience to ask questions if there are any. I'm sure there are.
That's a speech,
Can I would like to ask Alexandra, when you make such project, do you collaborate with some local theater, or it's just like your department or your art school without collaboration with any other theater in your city?
Both.
And to which extent do you collaborate with the theater? So how much you need, or how much you I don't know, influence the theater to join you, for instance, for this project, or how much it's just an educational project? You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. I think, you know, that in a way, the hardest ones to collaborate are, as the term was used earlier, the old ladies. There is a question of how much they can identify the need to when they're established and they're not. Okay. But we are working with them. We don't need them in that sense for production. It's not like we need them to do what we do. We need their resistance, their questions, their disturbance, and we believe that they need us too. So we are doing it, but we don't rely on them to produce our projects, if that's the...
I can imagine them needing you more, you know, being in a theater in your city. I would like to join this project. So did you meet any like demands from the theaters to collaborate on that? This is what I asked.
Did we meet their demands?
Or you were completely independently?
I mean, it depends on the project. This gallery work that I showed there, that was very much developed in conversation with them. I don't know if we met their demands, but we found an allegiance. We allied, I guess with the Me Too scenario that I just showed as well. That was clear that, especially with the performing arts in Iceland, that this was crying out for strategies for dealing with this and keep sustaining the conversation in a public space. So I guess in that sense we met a demand, yes, sometimes, and sometimes we're completely independent and we're floating in hot tubs. It depends.
I know that is a very big question, but a sort of crucial point of the political discussion. We know that collaboration or sharing is not critical or radical in itself. We live in a collaborative world, in a sharing economy, in a collaboration capitalism or platform capitalism and gamification, as we know. So how to do for making that this kind of practices can be really radical or could produce effect in the realm, or I don't know, so you understand a political position about that, how to
in some context, collaboration is very radical and very political, I must say, because where I come from, I mean, in my school it's not usual to do this. Many people collaborate, but always when they don't say they are collaborating. But I mean, theater is collaborative anyway, and arts are, but in some way to say this is common community are well forbidden, you know. But also what I think was more radical of our experience was that we chose the themes. The themes were very taboos in our society at that moment. But also we had our political position as teachers, but all political positions were welcome. So the very radical question was to talk about these taboos with all the different visions, allowing everybody to say what they think. I mean, for the mass graves, many people is against to unearth them. So talking about it is a way of unearthing it, but saying you don't want to talk about it is also a way of unearthing. We had students from very conservative families, and they have philo-fascist positions in life. So talking together about these questions, not trying to please the teachers, I think is the most radical thing.
I think clearly the project that I showed you, it was largely an aesthetic exploration as opposed to an intense political exploration. I think amongst the projects I might have talked about a little bit more is the number of different ways in which our schools engage, in particular with the Indigenous communities within Alberta, which is it's a huge topic in Canada in general and in our province specifically. And there's some really, really progressive Indigenous organizations that are both reaching out and responding in really powerful ways. So that would be another conversation to have. I think in relation to the piece that I did talk about, I guess it's always a surprise and never a surprise how radical the idea of sharing is across academic units. And I think that one of the things that we discovered a lot in this production is the degree to which the vocabularies are so distinct and the conventions are so solidly placed across a music department and a dance department and a theater department, for instance, that there's an entire process of education is a word that lands heavily, but there's a entire process of familiarization with simply the way that people move, the way that people organize themselves, the way that people think, which is disciplinary and thus ideological in nature. That does feel radical at times, that we could make something like this happen felt like a radical act. And so, I mean, I think that there are multiple layers at which that kind of collaboration has impact. And in this particular exercise, it made possible many, many things that were not possible before that production took place.
For me, personal equals political. In the performance practice that I conduct, I believe in a dialogue. And a dialogue happens between two people. Three is a crowd for me. I don't believe in changing society. I do believe in the possibility of changing individual. And that's the core of the performative reality, to establish one-on-one relationship and dive deeper into it, because aiming for such a general goals, such as, for example, changing climate, stuff like that, one can easily end up trapped in a very inflated language and in very little action.
I started the talk by saying our starting point is within this specific discussion I was having. We don't know what the Masters Programme can do, we don't know what the city can do, so it would be counterintuitive to say then that we're directed towards particular kinds of change. Maybe we're more directed towards particular kinds of processes. And Anna, you were talking about Donna Haraway, and one of the very inspiring things I find from her is her idea of compost and the way in which a lot of unlikely elements find themselves with unlikely allies, or is what she calls odd kin, kinships which are to be unexpected, and finding these unlikely alliances even through the difficulty of meeting. So it's on a much more withdrawn level for us. I mean, of course, the artists that we invite into lead learning situations and the artists that are enrolled on the program, for them, it's maybe more targeted and it becomes sharper. But from a curriculum point of view, we are a bit more withdrawn than that.
I have a question, if I may. I think that the topics that are recurring, not only during these 4 presentations, but during the whole symposium, are like getting disoriented, getting confused, getting drowned in the whole process, and getting lost, getting sick perhaps. And yesterday we heard that the worst that can happen in the theater is a compromise. But also we talk a lot about balance. So my question is, do you think that balance is something different from the compromise, or is it good to even try to find the balance? Isn't it better to try not to find the balance because that's the point where nothing is happening? In fact, I don't know. Just help me, please.
Compromise. I'm really into compromise. I think my life is it's a life of compromise, and in a way, we're like a mollusk. You know, a mollusk is a shell that holds on very tightly to a rock. And I think mollusks are full of compromise. You might want it to be on another rock somewhere where it's more sunny, and but you're not. You're on the rock you're on. So I think I'm not afraid of compromise, and I don't believe in balance, and I don't think that. I would never think that it's a good strategy to refuse to compromise because of this pursuit of imbalance. I think compromise is also full of imbalance too.
And that actually ties into a question that I had at multiple points throughout the last couple of days, and that was what I perceive to be a significant investment in distinguishing between, well, chaos and method, and when it came up and why it came up, because and Tom's gone, he was sitting in the front here, but in particular, in the discussion about curation, one of the notes that I took was about it was made very clear that the students don't get curatorial method, they get curatorial theory or curatorial, a more broad-based discussion about curatorial purpose. And I thought, and I've heard that multiple times over the last couple of days, a quite clear distinction that we don't. No, I don't want to put words in people's mouths, but I don't mean to be intentionally provocative, but I'm interested in the impetus to distinguish between, even in the title of our seminar, chaos and method, which on one hand suggests that these things are two different things and how do we relate them. And in the same breath, however, we put an and between them, and that kind of describes where we are most of the time, is we're wrestling with method, we're wrestling with chaos, and we're resorting to method to try to come to terms with the chaos, but then we try to incorporate chaos in order to undermine the certainty of method. So, I mean, I think I use the term balance all the time. I'm a big investor, I invest deeply in it, but I think of it as a process, not as a state. And I think what we're constantly doing is trying to reclaim some degree of balance, and that sort of tells me anyway that I'm alive, but it doesn't mean that I have any sort of fantasy that I'm going to achieve it or be able to stay there. So I think for me there's a difference between compromise and balance, because even compromise sounds like an end point, although perhaps it's a process too. These are words. But yes, I was just really interested in the impetus behind and the investment in distinguishing between method and that space, which is one of understood again and again as a space of individuality. Because it feels to me that in many ways the grappling with method is about trying to arrive at tools to express one's individuality.
For me, chaos doesn't mean a mess, and method doesn't embody order. Those two terms are not that antagonistic as it may seem. I perceive chaos as a system which is really well structured, however, remains unknown to the person within it. That would be my answer, tackling the issue of balance.
Well, I don't know what to say. I was trying to understand what you were asking, because I don't think that is a difference between compromise and balance. But I understand balance you mean with chaos and method. And so I agree with the three of you. I would say that, I'm not scared anymore of having no method, because this is also a method. And also I have discovered that when you are researching, finally you find things happen magically. So lately I work with magic, you know, and I know that it will happen. So I think, like as Alexander, that if you are compromised with what you are doing, you are never lost. So you don't have to care about balance or not.
I have a question.
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask a little about the level to which students are directed to engage in these activities in your respective programs, and to what extent there's a difference between BA or BFA or bachelor level and master's level students, and at what point they have agency and are leading the projects in general.
Maybe a few things to say about that. It's not always necessarily about believing that a kind of lack of leadership is better than a situation that's led, although both scenarios appear frequently, but rather how to empower the students to be able to identify the power dynamics in any given situation, be able to name them, be able to negotiate them, and there's a kind of working on the transparency there about where the power relationships lie. A slightly a side note to that is something which came to light with the whole Me Too discussion in Iceland, which hurt a little bit, or a lot, is this kind of one of the dangers with being the state of exception within a department, whether it's a program, a couple of programs, or individuals, is once you carry that category of being the one that's not doing it how everyone else does it, is that there becomes a separation in discussion and dialogue about how things are done across. So whilst let's say that we might prioritise this notion of transparency and consent in learning, and we would identify another programme that has a history where consent has been completely dismissed, it's very risky if your programme becomes the state of exception there, where kind of particular students, because of their particular futures that we imagine they might have, get special rights over others, and that's something which is curious when you're operating in a much broader institution, the dangers of those blind spots that manifest.
Again, I think the answer is it varies hugely, and it doesn't just vary by, in my school, by division, it varies by faculty member, in many cases, or these areas of specialization. And oftentimes, we have students who are deeply resistant to the imposition of authority, precisely where that authority seems to be sitting. So I think it's, in this particular exercise, I think we opened up a whole lot of possibilities that didn't exist prior to the creation of Power. But what was really interesting is that, one of the things I didn't mention when I was talking earlier is that because the training for the acting students in particular tends to be of a more conservative nature, a more traditional nature, the third and the fourth year, the senior students didn't show up to audition for this show. It was all the younger students. And at first I was disappointed because I thought what a great opportunity that they're passing up. But ultimately it worked in everybody, and certainly everybody who participated favor. They hadn't learned that the audience is going to be 100 feet away. They hadn't learned that what they were supposed to do is adopt a particular angle towards the front of the stage. They just wanted to perform. And so they were open to all kinds of things that many of their senior colleagues, senior peers were not. And so I actually think that we have begun a generational shift in terms of what students think a performer is and what a performance is. And there's no question that at the student festival that follows a half a year later, the amount of newer, open-ended work, participatory, immersive work is double, 3 times what it was the year before. So I think that it's not hard to open the door. and the students will, in many ways, lead that transition. So everybody else has to play catch up.
Thank you. And what about Lucia?
Well, I don't feel competent to answer that question because I don't see myself as a teacher, and I don't, in a way, I do not work on this institution that would shelter my pedagogical activities. The program that I was presenting ended up 2 years ago, and since then, the core of my, let's call it, pedagogical practice is sheltered by DEPOC. I see myself as a director, and when I lecture, I run workshops where I'm surrounded by my entire crew, the members of DEPOC Ensemble who co-lecture with me. Therefore, these questions, BAs, MAs, students, this, that, it's completely irrelevant for me. You have probably grasped it by now. I'm very much egocentric. I don't care about society. I care about myself. And I see this egocentrism, self-centeredness, as a very good starting point to changing society. So I can't really answer your question, sorry.
That's a great answer.
Okay, we are slowly approaching the end of the conversation, so if there are any last questions.
You know, one last thing, one more comment. It's my way or no way.
Yes, I have a question about, it's just a brief one. I was amazed by 200 performances in Calgary, and I was wondering, is there a critical number of outside the course performances over which, you know, it's too much, or that the coursework suffers, or?
For clarity, the 200 performances goes across all 3 divisions, and all 3 of them they present, so people, you know, we have people come, national, international people come and give performances. So the student performances is perhaps half of those. That also includes recitals and ensembles, and so, is your question, when is too much?
Yeah.
Well, it's a really good question because one of my jobs is to try to keep it all affordable, and it's to be frank, it's not right. It's not right now. So one of the things we're doing is totally a part of how much attention people have is it's too expensive. So one of the things that I have had everybody do is map out what they do, and then we lay them over top of each other, and then we try to make sense of the relationship between them. Because when I arrived, on any given weekend, there could be 7 events. 3 of which are happening at the same time, right beside each other. And now they all have audiences, so there are people coming to see them, but it's a level of activity that leads, personally I think, leads to a level of distraction that is difficult for the school to sustain. So, but I think your question probably has more to do with the students, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
at which point do they benefit or lose out?
Yeah, well I think like everyone, what the students do is they select what they're going to go to. And so the thing that gets lost perhaps is the extended presence of them in each other's work or at each other's work. But the students figure out what the right balance for themselves is, and they work to that. And nobody forces anybody to go to see anything. There's maybe 3 or 4 courses where somebody has to go to a show so they can write about it. But mostly it's just an incredibly vibrant place. The university is second to the downtown core, the place where most art activity in that whole part of the province takes place. So talk about balance. For me, it's about not stymieing that level of enthusiasm and that energy at the same time that we have to work.